Late 1990s. Mike Tyson was alone in his hotel room on the 14th floor of a Manhattan hotel when he heard a woman scream in the corridor. One scream, then silence. What he did in the next 90 seconds, barefoot, no security, no phone call, became a story that the hotel staff told for years. The man who caused the scream never checked into another hotel in New York again. This is that story. The scream lasted less than 2 seconds. One sharp, high sound from somewhere down the corridor, and then silence. The kind of silence that is worse than the sound that preceded it because it means something happened to stop it. Mike Tyson was in his hotel room on the 14th floor, alone, somewhere around 11 at night. He had been in New York for 2 days for meetings and was leaving the following morning. The room was dark, except for the television, which he was not watching. He was sitting on the edge of the bed thinking about something he had been trying to work out for most of the day when the sound came through the wall and the door and stopped him completely. He sat still for 1 second. Then he was on his feet. He did not call the front desk, did not call security, did not stop to put on shoes. He was at the door in 3 steps and in the corridor in 4 and moving toward the sound before any conscious decision had been made. Because some situations do not require decisions, they require responses, and the response was already happening before the thinking began. The corridor was long and carpeted and lit by the specific dim lighting of expensive hotels at night, warm and directional and designed to feel intimate, which at 11 o'clock on an empty floor feels instead like a tunnel. Mike was moving fast, not running, the particular fast walk of someone covering ground with purpose, and he could hear it now. A voice, male, low and controlled and mean, the specific vocal register of someone who has decided they are in control of a situation and wants the other person to know it. He turned the corner. A man he had never seen before was standing in the corridor outside room 1417, his back to Mike, one hand pressed flat against the doorframe, the other hand holding a room key card against a woman's chest, not handing it to her, pressing it against her, pinning her between his body and the door. The key card, just a prop, a way of closing the distance without using his hands, a way of trapping someone in their own doorway while maintaining a version of deniability. The woman was in her mid-30s, dressed for a business dinner, a black jacket and skirt, her bag on the floor where it had apparently fallen. Her face was turned away from the man and toward Mike, though she had not yet seen him coming because her eyes were closed in the way people close their eyes when they are trying to be somewhere else. Mike was 15 feet away when the man heard his footsteps. The man turned. He was large. Not in the way that means dangerous to people who understand danger, but in the way that means dangerous to people who have never encountered anyone larger. 6'2", heavy through the shoulders, the kind of man who had spent his whole life being the biggest person in any room he walked into, and had built a personality around that fact. He was well-dressed, expensive watch, the look of someone with money and the specific confidence that money produces in men who have never had it tested. He looked at Mike coming down the corridor, and his expression went through the same sequence that expressions always go through in these situations. Annoyance first, then assessment, then recognition, then something else. Mike did not slow down, did not stop at 15 feet or 10 feet or 5 feet. He walked directly to the man and stopped close enough that the man had to take a step backward, which put him away from the woman and away from the door, which was the only thing that needed to happen in that specific moment. Mike looked at him. And if you want more untold Mike Tyson stories like this one, subscribe right now and hit the bell. We post new videos every single day. Now, to understand what happened in that hotel corridor, you need to understand something about how Mike Tyson occupied physical space, not in the ring, outside it. In the years after his career, in the daily life of a man who was immediately recognizable to almost everyone he encountered, Mike had developed a relationship with his own presence that was different from the one he had in his 20s. He understood, in a way that took him a long time to learn, that his presence alone was a form of communication, that walking into a room changed the room, that standing close to someone communicated things that words were too slow to say. This was not a power he sought. It was simply a fact about him the same way his hands were a fact about him, and like his hands, he had learned that the question was never whether to have it, but what to do with it. He had learned to use it carefully. He had learned to use it precisely. He stopped close enough to the man in the corridor that the man had no choice but to step back, and in stepping back, he separated himself from the woman, which was the first thing that needed to happen. Then Mike looked at him and did not say anything for a moment, just looked, the way you look at something you're deciding how to categorize. The man in the expensive watch was breathing differently than he had been breathing 30 seconds ago. Not obviously, not dramatically, but the specific shallow breathing of someone whose body has registered something that their mind is still arguing with. "Get away from her," Mike said. His voice was quiet, not a whisper, but not raised. The specific volume of someone who does not need volume to be heard. 3 words, delivered without inflection, without anger, without any of the performance that threats usually require, because this was not a threat. It was a statement of what was going to happen. The man said something. Mike would not remember the exact words later. Something about minding his own business. Something about not knowing who he was dealing with. The specific script that men who are losing control of a situation reach for when the situation is already gone. Mike took 1 step forward. The man took 2 steps back. That was when the door behind Mike opened. The room next to 1417 belonged to a couple from Chicago, Thomas and Linda Garrett, who had been in New York for a long weekend and had heard the scream and then heard footsteps, and had been standing at their door for the last 30 seconds, trying to decide what to do. Thomas opened the door and saw Mike Tyson standing in the corridor between him and a large man who was now pressed against the opposite wall, and Thomas Garrett would tell this story for the next 20 years at dinner parties and family gatherings, because it was the most surreal thing he had ever seen, and he never found a way to make it sound as strange as it actually was. The woman, whose name was Christine, had picked up her bag from the floor. She was standing in her doorway now, her hand on the frame, watching. Mike looked at the man against the wall. "Leave," Mike said. 1 word. The man left. Not slowly, not with dignity, not in the way that men who have spent their lives being the largest person in the room usually move. He walked to the elevator with the specific focused pace of someone who has made a decision to get somewhere as quickly as possible without appearing to run, and he pressed the button and he waited the 11 seconds for the elevator to arrive, and he got in and the doors closed, and he was gone. Mike turned to Christine. "Are you all right?" he asked. She looked at him for a moment. She was still processing the sequence of events, the scream, the silence, the footsteps, the figure appearing at the end of the corridor and walking toward her without slowing down. "Yes," she said. "I think so. Thank you." "Did he hurt you?" "No, he scared me." She paused. "He was trying to get into my room." Mike nodded. "Do you want me to call the front desk?" "I'll call them," she said. "I just need a minute." Thomas Garrett was still standing in his doorway. His wife Linda had appeared behind him. They were both looking at Mike with the expression of people who have witnessed something they cannot entirely fit into their understanding of how events normally unfold. Mike looked at Thomas. "She's okay," he said. "You might want to call the front desk as well, as a witness." Thomas nodded. "We will," he said. "We heard the scream." Mike turned back to Christine. She was still in her doorway, her hand still on the frame, but her breathing had slowed and something in her posture had changed. The held quality of someone enduring something had relaxed into the aftermath of someone who has been through something and come out the other side. Before we continue, drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Mike Tyson heard a scream through a hotel wall and was in the corridor in seconds. No shoes, no security, no hesitation. What do you think made him move that fast? Tell us before we finish the story. Now, back to the story. The front desk sent security within 4 minutes. Hotel management arrived 8 minutes after that. Christine gave a statement. Thomas and Linda Garrett gave statements. Mike gave a statement, brief and factual. What he heard, When, what he saw, what was said. The man in the expensive watch was identified from the hotel's security footage in the lobby and corridor. He had a room on the 12th floor. He had been watching Christine since the elevator that evening, had followed her to her floor, had used a social engineering approach at her door that had escalated when she refused to open it. He was removed from the hotel. The police were contacted. What happened to him legally is not part of this story because it moved through systems and processes that do not make for compelling telling. But he was removed, and he did not return, and he did not check into another hotel in Manhattan for a very long time. Mike was back in his room within the hour. He did not sleep easily that night, not because of what had happened, but because of the 2 seconds between the scream and the silence, the specific quality of that silence, the way it sat in the corridor and the wall and the air of his room like a question that needed answering. He had answered it, but the 2 seconds stayed with him the way these things stay. Christine knocked on his door the following morning before he checked out. She was composed, professional, the composed professional version of herself that she had been before the corridor at 11 o'clock the previous night. She thanked him properly. She said things that were true and meant, and that Mike received with the slight awkwardness of someone who does not know what to do with gratitude. He told her it was nothing, which was not true, but was the only thing available to say. She told him it was not nothing, which was true. He checked out. He took a car to his next meeting. He thought about other things. Thomas and Linda Garrett told the story at dinner parties for 20 years. The night they were staying in a Manhattan hotel and heard a scream and opened their door and found Mike Tyson standing in the corridor between them and a large man who was pressed against the wall in the specific posture of someone who has just discovered the exact limits of his own confidence. The hotel staff told their version. The security team told their version. Christine told a version privately to people she trusted in the particular careful way that women tell stories about the nights things could have been different. Mike Tyson was in his hotel room when he heard a woman scream. He was in the corridor in 4 steps. He was at the source of the scream in 15 seconds. He said 6 words across 2 sentences and put himself between a woman and a man who had decided the night was going to go a certain way and discovered that it was not. No headlines, no cameras, no official record except a hotel incident report and a police contact log and the statements of 4 people on the 14th floor of a Manhattan hotel on a night that started like every other night and did not end that way. Just a scream, 4 steps, 6 words, and a corridor that went back to being a corridor. That is the story of the night Mike Tyson heard a woman scream in a hotel and did not wait to find out what happened next. He already knew what needed to happen next. He just went and made it happen.